What the hell is this DEI stuff? How is this thing ruining companies, and why is it that nobody cares about this? I mean, DEI, I've never even heard of this before coming from startup land, but in corporate world, maybe something that's right up your alley?
I don't like DEI, especially nowadays. It's become a check off the box exercise.
Whoever is better should get the job.
Trump just took office. Elon saying what he's saying about DEI. And look what a lot of these companies are doing. They're completely getting rid of their DEI program. They never believed in it, so of course it wasn't going to be effective. And of course you're going to piss off your employee base.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of the Startup in Suits podcast. I'm Jeremy Kirby, serial entrepreneur, founder, live in the startup world.
And I'm Michael Jin, the Suits part of the podcast. Been in corporate all my life, and now am head of business operations for a Bay Area tech company.
Today's episode is going to get spicy. We're actually going to talk about DEI hiring, specifically in Hollywood, and why everybody should interview with a Darth Vader voice changer.
I absolutely love it. And my only hope is that one, we don't get canceled, and two, I don't get fired because of this episode. So wish us luck. Here's where I stand with this, and we'll dig into this. But like at the root of it, I believe in DEI, but I think it's become transformed into something that it's transformed into a token versus something that's actually important for companies.
Okay, can we rewind for a second?
Yeah.
What exactly is DEI? Give me the definition.
That would be important, right? DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I actually, coming into this, didn't realize like how even a lot of this had started. So, I'm going to my trusty internet resource. And just
is it ChatGPT or is it Google?
It's Forbes.com actually.
Okay.
So Google, Forbes. And it was interesting to kind of read about just the history of DEI and how it even started and how it got so embedded within companies. Like I didn't know this, but apparently, it had its foundations in the 1960s with the US Civil Rights Act. So having like affirmative action policies being implemented to kind of address historical underrepresentation of certain groups. I don't think it had made its way into corporations yet, but I think a lot of people will cite the 1960s and that act as kind of the foundational moment for DEI, okay. Right? You fast forward through the 1970s, like then you start incorporating gender into kind of that thought process. 1980s, right, expanding to include like additional more racial issues. Gender equality continues to grow in there. I think that's when they started incorporating like ethnic, religious, LGBTQ plus communities. The 90s, I guess, is really when you started seeing like diversity professionals emerging within corporations and organizations. So that's when you started seeing like chief diversity officer or vice president of diversity. But I think it's really been in like the 2000s where it really like embedded itself within corporations. Like in 2000s are when corporations started introducing like training programs. 2010s toward the 2010s are like when businesses recognized the need to start hiring with DEI in mind and having their companies and teams kind of represent the diversity that they were seeing in society. And then really, I feel like the 2020s is when, these like DEI, I feel like truly took hold in corporations. So it's been a journey.
This is such a foreign thing to me. I mean, coming from startup land, we don't have that shit. Like you hire a bunch of good people and you just deploy them and you
don't care,
break stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't really care. You hire fast, you fire faster, and you just do shit.
Yep.
And like, so this whole entire episode is probably going to be me just picking your brain about this nonsense. I just trying to figure out why somebody needs to be hired because of their ethnicity or race or gender and all this other stuff is just mind-boggling to me. And I'm sure there's some valid points behind it, and I'm sure it was meant to be good, and I'm sure it's shifted since. But coming from startup land, it's hard to comprehend that there's a chief diversity officer or like
You don't
what?
even have a chief operating officer or a chief financial officer. You can't even worry about a chief
No.
diversity officer.
Yeah, I mean, you kidding me? And if they're C-suite exec, they're probably making six figures to help bring diversity to a company. Like what?
Well, and I'm curious. That's interesting because I have a thought about this, and I want to throw this out there and see what you think about this. I feel like in startup land, you have to be so used to wearing so many different hats. You naturally have to force yourself to think outside the box, to challenge yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, in order for your business to be successful. Like we talked like in the last episode about being able to pivot, finding product market fit, right? If you're not constantly like challenging yourself, if you're not constantly like evaluating or reevaluating the way that you think, your natural biases, like you may not be able to like your business and your startup may not be able to take off. Whereas like I feel like corporations don't, I mean, some corporations, depending on the industry, that's not always the case, or it hasn't been the case historically.
This is going to be a spicy episode. I can already tell. Like you and I have had some discussions about this off camera,
Yep.
and we tend to get pretty passionate about this specific topic. But I mean, we're going to be coming at it from two different angles, right? And they're two like very different angles. Um, Startup land, like you said, like everybody is searching for that scalable and repeatable business model, right? There is no C-suite exec in a startup because you're not even really a business yet.
Right.
You're basically just a group of people looking for something that's going to scale and looking for something that people are willing to pay for. So there's no need for positions. Like
Right.
I think positions kind of emerge naturally out of that because some people kind of take the reins of different things as we all go. But but yeah, you're right. Like there is no need for any kind of chief diversity officer in a startup because there really is no roles to begin with. It's just a bunch of people testing. Um, I mean, this one's going to be hard for me to comprehend of like how somebody is bringing on people and why they're better because of their diversity. Like that to me is weird to even think about. Um, and I was thinking about this as we were kind of doing the show notes and stuff and trying to figure out how we're gonna how we're even going to talk about this or how I'm going to talk about it because I'm not familiar with it, right?
Right. Right.
But in the startup world, like I kind of take a step back and typically startups kind of launch with either a group of friends or a group of people that have worked together in the past at different companies and somebody has a good idea and they kind of rally up the troops and typically it's a good group of friends that are very close.
Yep.
And if it's a guy group, usually it's just a bunch of guys that want to do something cool and try to make some money and build a business out of it. um, so I think like right out of the gate it's not even a thought to be diverse right out of the gate because it's usually your close friends or your close acquaintances that can really help scale and build an eventual business. So this whole thing is just so confusing for me, and I've never lived it in the corporate world, so I
I mean,
guess
do you feel like your friends are like they all think like you too? Or like
no,
even just
absolutely.
with your friend circle, there's like a natural diversity of thought there, right?
Well, I mean, typically you surround yourself with people that are like-minded, right?
Yeah.
So like me, I have a lot of friends that are business minded,
Yep.
just by nature of it, right? And I have a couple of friends that are distant that aren't business minded. But if I'm going to start a business and do a startup, I'm going to reach out to my closest business friends.
Yep.
Um, so I think you just surround yourself with like minded people naturally. But yeah, I don't even trying to figure out where to go from here. It's just, like it's just it's so out there.
Well, I
I
mean,
guess I would ask you.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I guess I would ask you. from the corporate world, like how did DEI even get started? Like how does it get brought up in the corporate setting? Like, are you just rolling into a corporate setting and it's just already implanted because it was implanted a long time ago, or was there just all of a sudden like a sudden shift of like everybody's hiring chief diversity officers and now this is a thing? Like, how did that come to be?
I don't know the exact history outside of just what I shared on
Mm-hmm.
Forbes, right? I mean, my experience working in corporate, and part of me wonders if it's skewed a bit because my entire career has been here in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's been a thing where it's just like when I got first hired into my job coming out of college, like it wasn't anything that was explicitly stated. So I don't know at that point, like if the companies that were like interviewing me had some, had some targets that they were trying to hit from a DEI
Mm-hmm.
perspective. I think as I've progressed in my career to where I am now, I feel like especially over, the last, I would say 8 to 10 years, I have seen DEI become much more explicit in how corporations approach it. Meaning like there are literally every year objectives, goals, uh, key performance indicators that you have to meet and check off as a team and as a company, to show that you've met the DEI standard set by the company.
Hmm.
Um, I don't agree with it.
And
I
it's not a mandate, right? It's just company mandate,
it's a company
company
mandate. I
bylaw.
think every company sets their own like targets. I don't know how they come up with it, but they set their own targets. And so we, certainly like when we report on our metrics every year, like we just have to show like we're meeting a certain percentage, whatever that might be, right? Percentage underrepresented, percentage of, certain genders or like ethnic groups that are hired against, things like that.
What is it for? Can you explain to me like what the purpose of it? Because I'm sure there was good intent, right? Like
My okay, I'm
what
going to
was
explain this based my own interpretation, how I see this, right? I mean, I think about certain corporations and certain corporate industries. There's a lot of history, like especially like I mean, I work in the finance sector, right? You're talking about these big banks. I used to work in aerospace and defense. You're talking about these companies that have been around for decades upon decades. And traditionally, if you think about these industries, like what type of employees had they hired in the past, it's white males,
Mhm.
right? Banking in particular, you're talking about, well, even like I worked for a consulting company, but that was they've been around for a long time. And, the running joke is like, when, go back to like the early 2000s, late 90s, and everybody was like a white man and they were walking around in a suit and a tie. That
Mhm.
was kind of there's a lot of history, I think, with a lot of these larger corporations. They've just been around for a while.
Sure.
And, it is one of those things where I just feel like, to me, DEI, where I see the value and importance of that is really just helping to introduce different thoughts, different perspectives, different personalities to go and tackle like the various like business problems that you need to solve. And I feel like from that perspective, like DEI, I can see the value and the importance of DEI. Because to your point, it's like, like we tend to surround like with our friend circle, even we surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, right? And maybe we
Uh-huh.
surround ourselves, if we're an extrovert, maybe we surround ourselves all with extroverts, or if we're an introvert, we surround ourselves all with introverts. Does that mean that like five introverts are gonna like you don't get a lot of don't get a lot of differences in approach and opinion if you have five extroverts in a room trying to tackle a problem, right?
Yeah. So the idea, I mean, that totally makes sense to me, and I think that there's some real merit there. Um, I guess like, and maybe we've just seen such a big shift in in the way that it's actually being implemented. I feel like in today's age, it's more about hiring for diversity
Yep.
over performance,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I think it's gotten so far out of whack now that now it's just you're trying to hit these arbitrary numbers and different metrics of diversity that you're kind of overlooking the actual performance metrics, which I think ultimately are the only thing that matter is performance. Like you get paid to do a specific job and do it well. Somebody who does it well and does it better than the opposite sex, regardless if it's male or female, right? Flip the script either way. Whoever is better should get the job. Period. In
Total,
my mind,
totally
based on
agree.
performance.
Totally agree. And I would say like DEI, you know, that's the other part where I feel like DEI might have helped open some doors where you might hire like a woman because she is like badass and she's doing much better than the man. And but like maybe before, like back in the 80s, 90s, I'm going to get my decades wrong, I'm sure. Like those doors weren't open. And I'm hoping DEI helped open those doors. But where I don't like DEI, especially nowadays, is
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to your point, like it's become a it's become a check off the box exercise, I feel like, for a lot of companies.
It's
So
lowering the standard.
yeah, and it's like actions have to match words. And like, so I look at, I mean, look, Trump just took office. Elon saying what he's saying about DEI. And look what a lot of these companies are doing. Target, right? I'm sure
Yep.
there are others. They're completely getting rid of their DEI programs. And so I look at
So
that and I'm like, did you really believe in it in the first place? If you didn't believe in it, of course, like it wasn't going to fucking work.
so here's a hot take. Did they only do it because Democrats had office and maybe there was kickbacks involved?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, that's certainly what it seems like. It seems like whoever's in office, we're going to cater to them versus growing a pair. Like, I'm
Yeah.
serious. Like, if you truly believe in DEI and you truly believe in what it represents, then, you know, why are you just paying lip service? When push comes to shove, why are you backing down?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the
And you
thing we're
should
seeing with a lot of these companies. The fact that they're backing down, to me means they never believed in it in the first place.
to be able to get rid of it that quick.
To be able to get rid of it that quick, they never believed in it. So of course it wasn't going to be effective, and of course you're going to piss off your employee base. Because I've experienced that too. Is like, you know, at one point it's like I totally believe, like, you know, like let's talk about gender, male and female for a second. Like women can like badass, like, you know, badass executives, badass in the corporate world, should get every opportunity, you know, if like should absolutely get equal pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like companies, because they just wanted to check off a box of I have to hire more women into a role. What happens when you don't believe in that? They ended up hiring women who weren't qualified. Just like before, they were probably hiring men who weren't qualified.
Yeah.
And you're just basically perpetuating the same exact bullshit.
Did you
Sorry, my mic
see?
probably spiked because I'm passionate about this.
We got to drop a picture of this, but did you see? And this is tragic. I hate to bring this up, but this is like what's going on in the media right now too. Is that flight that crashed when they were landing? There was an airplane that crashed, and the entire crew of that plane that crashed when they're landing. The plane flipped upside down, and luckily, I think everybody survived. The entire crew of that plane was a female, and supposedly, and I'm just headline reading here, they were all DEI hires,
Hmm.
and so people are roasting it all over Twitter or X and all over social media. There's a screenshot of the plane upside down and said, "This is what you get for DEI," and it's a plane upside down after it landed and crashed. Where did this all go wrong? And I should let me stop myself there because I don't want to say that because they were female that they crashed the plane because that's absolutely not what I'm saying.
Right.
Right. But if they were all DEI hires and they got the job over somebody who was better qualified specifically because of DEI, that's what I think is wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but I do think that that's happening across corporate America. Like I'm watching it from the outside looking in, just laughing and seeing that people that are more qualified not getting jobs. And, it's just mind boggling to me. And again, I'm startup world, so I have no idea why the hell is even a thing. I get the premise of it at the beginning. Like, I think it was meant to be good, but I think like everything, people just take advantage and twist it and turn it and flip it upside down until
Yeah,
it just becomes so bad that
yeah.
you have to get rid of it.
Or essentially, in this case, I feel like corporations were lazy. They wanted to make sure they didn't make the news, so they just kind of went along with what everybody else was doing. Like there was a Democratic president in office, let's appease the Democrats. There's a Republican
Mm-hmm.
in office who doesn't believe in DEI, let's appease the Republicans. And ultimately, like this is what happens. It's because they don't believe in it. And here's an interesting, when you were saying that, I had a different thought about like DEI. Like part of me wonders if they should actually still use DEI when they're originally, like, for corporations who's hiring. In my head, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it would seem to make sense if they use, like, if they apply DEI to like the applicant pool. Like when you're trying to like develop like your pool of people, candidates that you're going to interview.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, that makes a lot of sense, because then you're making sure like you get that wider range of candidates who might be different from each other, who might have different backgrounds. Maybe you have an art history major versus like an engineer, very different ways of thinking about the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean one's better than the other, but it at least opens you up to it. But when it comes down to actually going through the interview process and making your final hire, like it absolutely should be based on merit. It should be based on how they perform in the interview. It should be based on like, like how, like the skills that they demonstrate during that process.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
So do we
that's
think?
where companies went wrong, is they kind of said DEI, I have to just limit myself to, it's almost like they went in the opposite direction. I have to, like, my pool has to be all DEI and my hire has to be like DEI. And from beginning to end, I have to check off the box.
Hmm. See, and then now you got Republicans in the House, and you've got Elon Musk, who's a big advocate of getting rid of DEI,
Yeah.
who's now got this megaphone basically being in the White House all the time.
Yep.
Everybody's joking around saying that, Elon Musk is actually the president or vice president indirectly. But, and like you said earlier in the episode, he calls it the woke mind virus. He's been very vocal about it. He's talked about how Tesla and SpaceX are getting rid of all that stuff and hiring over, um, results rather than political stuff. Is Elon Musk the leader of this anti woke mind virus? Like, is he the one that's actually going to help get rid of it? Like, do we think he's the one that is getting these corporations to cancel this out
I
of all
think
people?
in a way, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of enabling CEOs to go back to their base instincts, whatever that might be.
The whole politically correct thing is thrown out the window now.
The whole politically correct thing is thrown out the window now. But what does that mean, right? It means the people who value that diversity of thought will continue to do that. It could also mean like other leaders who, maybe DEI force them to actually expand their thoughts and evaluate their biases. Now it's almost like they get a free pass. So if you ask me, like, I mean, Elon's doing it. I mean, do I think it's going to be better? I don't know. I don't think so.
Mhm.
I think we're just going to swing back the other way.
It's interesting times because there's like this big shift right now where for like what maybe like the last 10 years we were dealing with this whole cancel culture.
Yep.
For the past 10 years everybody was so afraid to say anything. CEOs couldn't say anything, and they were making marketing campaigns based on certain things. Like we've all seen these really shitty marketing campaigns that got people canceled. um, some of them I actually didn't even think were that bad,
Yeah.
but because cancel culture was so strong, that I think every CEO out there of a big corporation kind of had to rethink the messaging and how everything was being portrayed, which I think ultimately helped with this whole DEI push. But now we're seeing this big shift going from politically correct to nobody gives a shit anymore. And you know, it's being thrown out the window, and we're seeing it like crazy, just companies axing the DEI program and people saying, I mean, hell, you look at the stuff that comes out of President Trump's mouth,
Yeah.
and everybody cringes and shakes their head because it's like, I can't believe the president of the free world is actually saying this. Um, but I don't think anybody cares anymore because I think we lived through 10 years of shit when everybody had to watch everything they did because somebody would be offended no matter what you said. And you had to kind of walk on eggshells. I think we're seeing this big shift now, finally. I'm here for it. I love it. I like saying whatever the hell I want. I'm not obviously not going to talk about controversial things and say dumb stuff, or at least I don't think it's dumb. Some others might think it's dumb, um, but yeah, you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells, and you should be able to speak your mind, and you should be able to talk about all these things. So I'm excited to see.
It's funny. It's funny that, as you're saying that, I'm thinking like, isn't that kind of what DEI, like to me, that's what DEI, the true intent of DEI should have been, is like I talked about earlier, different perspectives, the willingness to express your thoughts and be heard, right? And valuing other perspectives and different perspectives without feeling judged or without feeling like you're walking on eggshells. So to me, it's like core DEI makes sense, but we tend to swing from one direction to another.
It was a facade. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. It was a facade to push an agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think ultimately that's really all it was. Because like you said early on, you touched on it, and I think you nailed it, is if they truly cared about the DEI initiatives, they wouldn't be canceling them so quick. Right. It was all to play up to whatever was happening in society or whoever was in the White House. And that's why I mentioned like maybe there was kickbacks. Like we see all the shit happening with the American budget and how much stuff is being cut out. I mean, as soon as Elon Musk gets in there and really starts diving into the money, like we're going to see some crazy shit that comes out of that. I bet that's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast.
Well, yeah, I know. And these corporations, they have big lobbying wings in DC, oh, yeah. Right? So to your point, like kickbacks or whatever, like I'm sure it was happening, and I'm sure it still is happening. Now it's just happening in a different direction.
How do we feel? And I guess where do we see the biggest DEI impact? Like what industry do you think it caused the most damage? Is there something that stands out to you? Like a specific industry or specific job, something that just really screams at you of like, we really fucked up here?
I don't know if there's a specific industry or a specific job. I think where I personally feel like it might have had the biggest impact is when you think about corporations and what drives corporations, it's really like executives, right? And senior leadership. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's one of those things where it's like, are you hiring the senior leader to check off a box? Or are you hiring the senior leader truly because of the merit of what they bring to the position? And I feel like I have seen instances where it's like hiring to check off a box ends up setting a company back. Like we talked about pivots, like on the last episode. I mean, here I feel like, you're a larger company is not going to feel that impact of a bad hire, for a while. And maybe like a lot of these companies still haven't felt the impact of that yet, because I mean, they're so big sometimes, unless something crazy happens, some of these companies are a little too big to fail right away. Mm-hmm. But like you bring in the wrong leader who then sets the wrong mindset, the wrong direction for the team, for a company, because they're just not experienced enough or they don't know what they're doing. Like that will set companies back. And I don't know if we fully felt the impact of that yet.
That's a great point. How about Hollywood? Something that I think about, like this stood out to me like a sore thumb. The end of one of the Marvel movies, Captain America. I'm drawing a blank on the actor's name. Help me out here if you remember his name.
The latest one?
Yeah. Who's Captain America? Who plays Captain America?
Shoot.
I can see his face. I just can't.
I know, and he used to be Falcon. I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah. So while you look that up, the one thing that stood
Anthony Mackie. Is that who you're thinking about?
He's the new Captain America.
He's a new one. Oh, you're thinking about the original one.
Who's the original one?
Chris something.
It's the one that all the females like. All the
Yeah, I
females say
know.
he's
I
attractive.
know.
I'm drawing a blank on his
I'm thinking it's not Chris Hemsworth and not Chris Pine. I can think of all those other Chris's except for the actual Chris. I'll look it up.
name.
Keep going.
Okay. So yeah, at the end of one of those movies, like he
Chris
was
Evans.
Captain America. Chris Evans. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Chris Evans was Captain America for how many episodes or for how many movies? Quite a few.
Quite a few. Yeah.
And then during this whole politically correct woke mind virus, this whole era, at the end of at the end of his last appearance as Captain America, he passes the shield off to the black actor, and I could not help but think, here we go. There's just they only did that to appease the DEI stuff. And he's a great actor. Like, don't get me wrong, like they're all great actors, but I just got that gut feeling that, like, here we go. It like infiltrated Hollywood now. Like, they only did it to appease the DEI stuff.
Well, and this is where I'm jealous.
I've seen it in other movies.
And I would agree. I can think of some other ones, some Disney live action ones that come to mind right away.
That's right.
Yeah, but I think, and I mean, I also just watched the Harry Potter Broadway show recently, and same thing there. You can't help but think. I mean, they're incredibly talented actors, but you can't help but have that thought. I feel like sometimes, and to me, it's just that this is where I'm jealous of like startups, is because I'm like, you don't have to swing one way or another, and that's where I feel like this whole DEI thing has just gone out of whack. Is because I get why it's happening, and it's to correct and a lot of times overcorrect for things that have swung like the other way for the entire history of like Hollywood or corporations. And it's unfortunate because it's unfortunate that we have to swing one way and then swing another way. And hopefully, like, I this might be a cop-out answer, but I just really want us to like settle in like in the middle. Like, honestly, I just want us to settle in on the middle, because we just keep swinging one way or another, and it's not good for anybody.
You ever thought about coming over to the dark side?
I mean,
startup?
Yeah, the way things are going at corporate, yeah, the dark side's starting to become brighter and brighter every day.
We have this saying in startup land. As soon as the startup needs to hire an HR department, it's time to get the fuck out. We move on to the next project because nobody wants to deal with HR. That's when it starts to get no fun, because that's when all the stuff starts to come in, the DI stuff, the executives, like startup land people. Like, I love taking an idea, researching it, building it out, proof of concept, finding market fit, building the product or service, and then once it's launched, I'm like, great, see you later. I'm off to the next one. That's where I love to live. But yeah, as soon as we always joke around about it. As soon as we have to hire HR, it's time to get the hell out.
So noted. The day that this podcast grows to a point where we have to hire HR, we're canceling it.
If we have to hire HR, that'd be a great thing. We would both go on vacation and we would pass it off.
We would. Yes. Because we probably couldn't have said half the things we said on this podcast.
I know, right? Well, I mean, we might be canceled after this one anyway, and we're only 2 episodes in, so who knows?
That must be some record. At least we make the record books.
So where does this go from here? Like, where do we think this shift is going to happen? Is it finally going to be meritocracy over diversity? Are we finally going to value skills over racial things or gender and all this stuff? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, I think to me, this inherently goes down to like a deeper rooted issue around, like, are we, whoever we are, right? As a senior leader, as a CEO of a company, are we self-aware enough to evaluate our own biases and to be able to call out our own biases and take action against that? Because to be honest, like, if we can't do that as leaders, as business owners, as whatever, or even as people, like this whole debate around meritocracy versus forced diversity, to what I've been saying, like what I think is it's just going to swing back and forth. It's a pendulum that's always going to be moving back and forth and never going to settle in on where I think we need to settle in. And that's where my head was going earlier in the episode around like, we need to open ourselves, like as a hiring manager, I want to open up my pool of candidates to be as wide as possible. Like, even if I'm hiring for a finance role, I don't really care. I'll go and like talk to somebody who like is an art history major.
Mhm.
I'll go talk to somebody who's an engineer. And for me, it's about less so about like who you are, what you look like, what your background is. I want to know how you think. I want to know how you approach problems. I want to see if you're somebody that like I can get along with, I can go to battle with.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, though, and I want to like to me, those three things are like crucial and critical. I don't want to have to feel like I'm checking a box. I naturally like don't care. Don't box me in. Don't force me into a box one way or another. Like let me hire the best person, and I totally agree with that. But my only fear is that like not everybody like is self-aware enough to take that approach.
That's good. I'm going to keep hiring people that can break shit and are just absolutely savages at executing
Yeah.
and have great ideas.
Yeah.
I could care less what color they are, what their sexual preference is. I
Right.
don't care about any of that.
Right.
I want somebody, like you said, that is somebody that I get along with and I can go to battle with. Somebody who's gonna push me to be better.
Yep.
And it's almost like you just look at the performance without looking at the person.
Yep.
That's what I wish we could all get to.
And honestly, maybe everybody should do interviews blindfolded.
With voice changers.
With voice changers. I'm fucking serious there.
Should we do an episode of a podcast where we're both Darth Vader?
Let's do it. Oh, I love that.
and then I don't think anybody would know. Like, I wonder if they could tell who's a startup guy and who's the suit guy.
Right.
Oh my god.
No, I honestly think that's an ingenious idea. Like any resume like a hiring manager should review, take out the name.
Interesting.
Base it off the merits. When you're conducting an interview, don't look at the candidate. Blindfold yourself, turn off video. You probably should do a voice changer, to be honest with you. Remove any kind of potential visual or inherent bias that might be introduced through those things.
That's very interesting. I wonder how that would play out.
Maybe we should bring on an HR expert and ask and be like, how many HR rules are we violating by doing this?
I guess it depends on where if you work at Tesla, it's probably 0.
Right.
If you work at Facebook or one of those other places, you're probably breaking all kinds of rules. Who knows? Yep. I'd love to hear. This will be interesting to see some comments too. I'm sure we're probably going to get some comments on this episode. I look forward to reading through them because I'm sure there's going to be some people that have had some really negative experiences with this in the corporate world. But I'm also looking forward to reading some of the comments that are probably on the positive side too. Like, I'd love to hear a positive story about this and like shine some light on it. Like, how is it actually good? Yeah. Because we're just being fed all the negative shit all the time. Like, if there's a good story about this, like, somebody please tell it. I've never seen it, so I can't speak to it. But I would love to. I would love to see somebody shine some light on the positives.
That would be amazing.
And do interviews blindfolded with Darth Vader voice changers.
How can you go wrong with that? Shit.
Let's do it.